Hi everyone, you've got Tiffany Yu here, and this is this episode of Diversibility Amplified, where we are chatting with members of the disability community to learn more about their disability pride journey and more about them. So, Puneet Singh Singhal, before I read his bio, um, I just want to share that Puneet has kind of been in the diversibility ecosystem for a little bit. Not only has he been a recipient of the Awesome Foundation Disability Foundation chapter grant, he has also been honored as one of our D30 Disability Impact List honorees. And so let me go ahead. And he is also featured in the Anti-Ableist Manifesto, this book that I wrote, which actually I have the India paperback version that is going to be launching on March 6th. So a lot of exciting things going on. Let me read Puneet's bio. Puneet Singh Singhal is a disability rights advocate and an accessibility professional. He's a co-founder of Billion Strong, an organization working towards empowering persons with disabilities globally. He's a person with dyspraxia and stuttering, and he is working at the intersection of disability, climate change, rampant inhumane urbanization, and mental health. Recognized by Forbes for his efforts in workplace inclusion, Puneet was also honored with the Commonwealth Innovation Awards 2023 for his contributions to disability inclusion worldwide. His commitment seeks to empower marginalized communities and create accessible environments for all. Born into poverty and facing domestic violence, his experiences fuel his passion for advocacy. Hi, Puneet. That was a lot. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. It's really a lot to listen to your own bio. I was getting really anxious. Yeah.
No worries. And tell our audience where you are joining in from. Also tell us what time it is where you are.
Uh, yeah. So I am joining from New Delhi, India, and right now it's 3:30 a.m. and I'm wearing a black headphones. My hairs are black, kind of brownish as well, and I'm wearing a check shirt, kind of dark blue and brownish. Yeah, and I'm an Indian man. Really looking forward to talk to Tiffany tonight. Yeah, thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah. And thank you for the reminder. My visual description, I'm a Taiwanese American woman with short black hair, and I'm wearing a beige colored dress with floral prints on it. And I'm joining you from Los Angeles, where it is 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And I am sitting next to a copy of my book, The Anti-Ableist Manifesto, that has this yellow to orange gradient cover. So, the first question I always like to ask is around disability origin stories. And so, I know in your bio, you mentioned kind of your diagnoses. I want to better understand. I know you had a little bit of a journey toward getting those diagnoses as well. So, can you share a little bit more about your own journey of claiming a disability identity?
Uh, Thank you, Tiffany. First of all, congratulations for the anti-ableist manifesto. It seems like like a personal victory to me as well. I'm so happy. I don't know. Seriously, like it's such a I would say, uh, acknowledgement of our community globally, and being a small part of it. I'm really blessed, and also I've shared some things in the Iblis Manifesto as well, which I would request everyone to read it. And something around diagnosis as well, if I remember closely. I don't remember, but I actually shared. I'm looking forward to actually read the book. But actually, I'm really excited, and also this process of self diagnosis and then getting a formal diagnosis. I think it's a very uh, tedious task in countries like India, where neurodiversity is still seen as some kind of taboo. But I'm very happy to share that things has been changing a lot. In last 2 years, I can see people talking about mental health. I can see people talking about neurodiversity. I'm so very excited to see what's next, in this journey of this country towards, neuro inclusion. I'm really looking forward to that.
And I just so happened to find the place where Puneet is mentioned in the book. I believe you're mentioned twice, so we'll talk a little bit about both of them, but I thought I would read read the contribution. So it says Puneet Singh Singhal is an accessibility professional in India who lives with multiple non-apparent disabilities. In 2021, he decided to seek a formal diagnosis for dyslexia and dyspraxia. And here is Puneet's quote. During the diagnostic process, the professional, renowned in New Delhi, recognized my achievements and contributions to our society. Yet his words, "You are so successful, why do you even need a diagnosis?" left me stunned. It was a stark reminder of how success is often misinterpreted as a sign of the absence of struggle. This encounter underlines a profound issue, the persistent belief and lack of understanding surrounding non-apparent disabilities. Unlike physical disabilities, conditions like dyslexia and dyspraxia are invisible to the naked eye, often leading to misconceptions and underestimation of the challenges faced. Um, and so, given that you are joining us from India, for I would say probably the majority of our listeners are based in the US. Can you give us a little bit of insights just as to the cultural
Mhm.
perspectives around what disability looks like? And I know you're doing so much work globally around disability
Mhm.
inclusion, so you probably get a good sense of some of the differences that
Yeah.
are observed globally.
I think the most stark and contrasting difference would be how, Asian societies see neurodiversity as a whole, and uh, it's kind of still seen as a burden, and it's a very overwhelming experience for people who are actually going through it. So I would say it's a very kind of a beginning stage for our societies to actually uh, uh, kind of acknowledge these conditions, and also to look at these conditions in an objective way, instead of pathologizing, or using some insensitive derogatory terms regarding these conditions.
I also want to mention, I'm looking down because I'm looking for Puneet's other contribution in the book, which is around kind of the moral model of disability, which I actually think we see a lot in Asian cultures. I'm East Asian. Puneet is Indian South Asian, and and you've also been a guest on the anti-ableism series. And one of the things you talked about is kind of redefining normal. So I was wondering if you
Yeah.
could talk a little bit more about that.
I think it's very normal to use the word normal in that sense, because people actually use normal uh, for non-disabled people, for people who are cisgender heterosexual, right? So for LGBTQ community and for disability community, I think this word uh, normal is very toxic, because it is used against us, to somehow give us the, that thing that you are not normal. So it's huge. And one of my friend shared me that even these, it's a burden, kind of, because somehow people say in a very religious society, people say that I will pray that you become normal. So the prayer itself become a kind of a punishment, so I think, and it's present in every religion. I'm not talking about just one religion. So here is something where all the religions meet against disabled people. So there is, I would say, it's quite common in every religion. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think something that I am working to unlearn as well is talking about the norm or talking about normal, because when we describe non-disabled people as normal, essentially we're saying that over a billion people globally who are disabled deviates from some kind of norm, but that's a lot of people. And so I love that you specified that. I wanted to share back on the point around kind of cultural differences, where Puneet shared a little bit more of his story. And this is in a chapter in the book talking about the different models of disability. And one of the models of disability that we actually don't spend as much time talking about, we talk a lot about the medical model, and we talk a lot about a desire toward the social model, which is how can we fix and adjust the environment and attitudes around disability, and the disability in itself is not the problem that needs to be fixed. And so the moral model says the moral model of disability views a person as morally responsible for their disability. This model is often tied to religious or superstitious beliefs. For example, a person or our ancestors did something immoral in the past that caused our disability.
Yeah.
As a result, the individual is seen as being at fault for our disability and deserving of it. In the example of a person who cannot use stairs, they may be seen as not trying hard enough or undeserving of entering the building. Puneet Singh Singhal, a disability inclusion advocate who lives with dyslexia, dyspraxia, and stammering, was born and raised in a slum in India and experienced extreme poverty and domestic violence. Along with becoming a caregiver to his chronically ill mother, he shared that he experienced horrific bullying in school for his speech difference. Enacting the moral model of disability, he told me, even parents got in on the act, fearing I'd infect their kids with my stammer. And so it was
Mm.
kind of this idea that somewhere in our ancestral lineage, there was this bad luck or some curse on the family that made it so that now had disabilities that were then would be contagious on and rub our bad luck off onto other people.
Mhm.
Now, I'm curious. I know that's something I'm unlearning from my parents' generation. I'm curious if you see that changing within our generation now, this movement away from the moral model of disability.
Absolutely. And actually, one step forward, I will say that I'm waiting for more activists and more advocates to come up with a better model of disability, right? So, there will be generations of new activism and new kind of activism will come up. And to talk about, generally it's a very common conception, in I would say misconception in South Asian countries, plus China as well. I have few friends in China that have shared similar experiences, how their uh, how their parents also used to think the same, and how their society is quite the same. So I think it's a pan kind of Eastern societies phenomena where you try to associate. You have to give some reason to your disability, because you are quote unquote abnormal, so you have to justify what leads to this. So, and in societies where religion plays a central role, everything should revolve around a religion. So you have to rationalize, you have to, make sense of all of these things. So it's absolute makes sense how people will try to wrap everything around one concept, and then they will present you as someone, who is not desired.
That's so interesting. In many ways, I believe that religion was the first community. And many of these religions may have viewed disability through the moral model or through some other harmful models that said that we were undeserving or there may have been some bad luck somewhere. And we were actually having a conversation in Diversability a couple of months ago around the role of spirituality in our lives if we found that whatever religious communities we originally were a part of weren't necessarily serving us. And what I thought was a really fascinating takeaway from that conversation to me is that many of the community members within our disabled community, spirituality to them meant being a part of a disability community and finding uh, that broader anchor for or that higher level anchor for advocacy. So I feel like we spent
Absolutely. Diversibility was something for me, coming and meeting to community members, this having discussion and conversations on various topics, it was healing. It was certainly healing, and spirituality for me, it's pretty much like, how you can heal yourself. And if that comes with, community healing, if that comes through, you come to know that you are not alone, that itself is a very very strong message, that okay, I have someone to fall back on. So yeah, that was really helpful, and I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. Uh, talk to me a little bit about some of the work that, talk to me a little bit more about Billion Strong, some of the initiatives that the global community is working on together.
Yes. So right now we were working with Indeed to make their job platform more accessible and inclusive for ourselves. And in the beginning, they were we were also thinking that okay, what to do with with the money part and all of these things. But in the journey, we both realized that it's not the money, it's the intention that will lead us to results. So for example, we worked on the job description part extensively, how we can make the job description very simple and plain for not only for neurodivergent people, also for the people who don't have English as their first language. So if we can tweaks these small little things, and nudge people to become more accessible as an organizations, so I think that played a huge role. How we can uh, think of such solutions which doesn't require much of resources, which doesn't require that much of but intention. So it was a huge lesson for me, for the team, for Indeed, and for ourselves as well, that the mindset that is more important, and how you shift that mindset. It's it will be changing the whole trajectory of how we see accessibility, because generally we see accessibility as kind of a bothering thing, that okay, oh, this is, we need to do this, or we need money or that. So there are a lot of excuses, there are some valid reasons as well, but more or less we generally think of this as that okay, this is little troublesome, it will bother us. But no, this is not the case. We have simply realized that things can be done uh, in a very smooth way as well.
Yeah, and one of the things you're highlighting with that partnership too is I've been thinking a lot about how almost at every single point of the hiring process, there could be unintentional exclusion of disabled people,
Absolutely.
right? So the
Yeah,
work that you're doing around job descriptions, simplifying the language, looking over the requirements to make sure that there aren't unnecessary requirements included or phrased in a language that may
yeah.
be unintentionally deterring a qualified disabled candidate from applying. All the way
Absolutely.
to,
From interview things how even how we see confidence, because especially how neurodivergent doesn't fit into all these criteria of having an eye contact, and we always prefer flexibility, and how flexibility can be working from home, or can be hybrid, or can be coming to office, and anything, so giving that person that choice. It's not about that always all the neurodivergent people will only take one option. No, I think it's about the option part. So I think this opens up a lot of doors to accessibility.
yeah, I had this aha moment as I was doing some promo for the book where I looked at the definition of inclusive design, which
Hmm.
says you have multiple design variations so long
Hmm.
as you achieve the desired outcome. And then I thought about what accessibility and accommodations are is multiple design variations so long
Yeah.
as you achieve the desired outcome, which in this case could be how you engage with an office space, right? So you talked about home, hybrid, office, having all of those, having the flexibility to provide those different design variations, enable someone who works in those environments to do their work best. Um,
And Tiffany, it's so interesting, that because I look up to you as as one of my role model, and when you say that you are still learning, accessibility is such a broad thing. We cannot even say that we are an expert in this. It's such a broad concept of being accessible. I think I'm always intrigued by this. Some with some organizations claiming that we are 100% accessible. We don't even know what is 100% accessibility.
Well, that's also why I use the language inclusive design versus
Yeah.
universal design, because one of the things that we are learning is that you can have two people who have access needs that may conflict with each other. And the
Mhm.
example I like to use is someone who who experiences migraines would may prefer to work in a low light, very dim light, or no light situation versus someone who is hard of hearing or needs to see faces and lips moving may prefer to be in a very well lit situation. So again, it's again the dream is universal design, right? But there is
Yeah.
it's how can we also acknowledge that there's so much diversity within our community and like you said, one size does not fit all. Uh, some buildings are attempting such, and the Ed Roberts building in the San Francisco Bay Area is one example where they've got elevators and then I hope you get a chance to see it. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
go inside, there are, there's a big, it's kind of like a cylinder shape where you can essentially access every floor without using the elevator if you didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also know as we transition out of the work conversation, I also know you're very passionate about the intersection of disability and climate change. And we don't often see a lot of that conversation happening among the climate change and climate justice movement. So, can you talk a little bit about where your passion around that like how it intersects and what your passion is and what you're advocating for around that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Tiffany, things are getting very tough, especially in India, where pollution is all-time high, and the heat wave is getting very severe, especially in northern part of India where I live. So, the temperature is easily reaching 50 degrees Celsius, which is really not livable, and especially for uh, people who are neurodivergent, people who have these conditions, they require different kind of support, and their bodies react in a very different way. So I realized that that our disability community is being disproportionately affected by climate change around the world. I've been talking to people in the US, I've been talking to people in the Asia, Africa, everywhere. Their reactions is different, their response is different, maybe the type of calamity is different, but somehow this is a very common thing that we are being disproportionately affected. And as you say, there is no climate justice without disability justice. We have to think about this. And often quote you, and through green disability, I'm always trying to bring this angle to the conversation, because we are always missing. And in all these policy, all these climate conversations, we are nowhere to be seen.
Why why do you think that is? I mean, I have an opinion, but
Mhm.
like I think many of us can get on board that disability justice is reproductive justice. Disability justice intersects with most other social
Yeah.
justice movements. And uh, outside of you, I can probably name on my one hand on my one non-injured hand, how many other disability justice advocates are active
Mhm.
as part of this conversation around climate justice as well. I'm curious if you can comment on why you think there is such underrepresentation of disability perspectives in those spaces.
I guess like in the Indian context, I would say, there are uh, in the conferences, in all these conversations, we don't see apparently disabled people, be it like, physical disability or other kind of disability. We don't see them out of their homes, out of in the public places. We don't see them. So yeah, so their participation is very low in these conversations, which is kind of again, because the world is loud, the outside world is not accessible. And in all these countries like India, this leads to a lot of kind of a vicious cycle where things are not accessible, so people are not out, and the people that are not out, so things are not becoming accessible. So for me, I have observed that maybe there are more I would say systematic p- reasons as well, but this is the most apparent reason that I have observed through my eyes. Yeah.
And one of the other things you are passionate about, which I actually haven't seen, is something you call rampant inhumane urbanization. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what that
Mhm.
is and kind of where that fits into the disability conversation.
So definitely when I was, the place that I was born and brought up in. This is slum, but during my father's time and before that, it was a village. It was a totally a very green place, but due to huge migration from other parts of India for the economic opportunities, because Delhi there are jobs, there are employment opportunities are here, so a lot of people came, and it was uncontrolled immigration and urbanization at its best. It was not planned. The government was not able to provide people proper housing, and the infrastructure was not ready for that, and now this village has turned into a slum. So this is what I have told, because the elder, the people who are in their late 60s 70s, they say that it was a beautiful place, very green, very kind of this thing, and now this is turned into a concrete jungle. So this is what I generally meant by uh, uh, rampant inhumane urbanization, because this is not how cities should grow. We generally talk about how cities should be. I only know one thing, that we should not make more cities which we are running from, because we all say we want to live in some countryside, we want to go to the mountains, we want to go to the beach, because we are building these kind of cities where no one wants to live, and we are keep on building these new cities, especially in countries like India, which is like hugely urbanizing. It's a developing country, so it's kind of again a cycle which is we are repeating, and disabled people are nowhere to be seen. If generally people with, there are some neighbors of mine with Down syndrome, so I have never seen her outside of of their house, because it's so much polluted. She cannot no tolerate all of these kind of things, that the heat and the pollution, so she's always at home. So these we are always at the receiving end, be of any kind of calamity. Yeah.
Yeah, and in some ways, it also kind of ties into this idea of climate refugees
Yeah.
too, where
Yes.
maybe some of these very urban populated locations become unlivable,
Yeah.
um, and uh, force people to become displaced, whether that is by choice and you have the privilege to do so, or perhaps due to other social factors and other systems of oppression and socioeconomic factors, um, you end up in a forced displacement
Yeah.
or relocating to a place where you are um, subject to poor air quality because that's
Mhm.
what you can afford, right?
Sure. And actually, we are not like permanent refugees, but for some months of the year, because of my mom's health, because of for my own sake as well, we go to some places when we cannot tolerate this much of pollution. So we have kind of already become temporarily kind of refugees, because we don't have much place to live in the outside city, but we live on rent. We somehow manage, but this place becomes unlivable for few months of the year. So this is how we manage, and a lot of people are actually doing this for
Mhm.
their health. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. Um, we've talked about a lot of different topics. I guess one other one you are passionate about is mental health. Do you want to talk a little bit more about kind of some of the advocacy you're doing there?
Yeah, actually, stories are very powerful, as you know, Tiffany. I have learned through diversibility, through your own work as well, and I aim to provide platform where, through various forms of expression, how can our community express, their emotions, how they can even rant when they want to. So I think these kind of conversations and these kind of activities, be it of any kind, for just talking, maybe writing, maybe speaking to someone. So this kind of small community meetings are we're trying to do some kind of these things as well, and also planning to have some conversations, like some recorded conversations as well, in regional languages, because most of the people cannot speak English, and the language is not English. So we are also planning to have some conversations, maybe some recorded conversations in regional languages as well. I think for expression is really important. Yeah.
Potential exclusive news that we have a podcast coming soon from Puneet. Um, and
Yeah, yeah,
and
you need
and
to
I
have your captions on for English captions. Yeah.
and I guess what I will say is that we've talked a lot about a lot of different areas. We started talking about intersectionality and cultural perspectives around disability between India and the US. We talked about uh, disability advocacy in the workplace and what accessibility and inclusion might look like in those spaces, starting from job descriptions. We moved to talking about climate change and mental health and inhumane urbanization. I guess I'm curious what your ideal vision for the world is. What is the impact you are hoping to leave on the world?
I think I want disabled people to be considered a very strong stakeholder in various aspects of policy making. Whenever there is some conversation that is going on, we are not only, like, we are not even only invited, but we actually listen to, and our inputs are actually included in the policies. Because many times I have seen that people are invited, but you know sometimes the officials say that that the policy has been drafted already. So when I say that the policy has been drafted already and you don't want to change according to the feedback, why are you even inviting us? So I think it doesn't make any sense, and we wanted to be like be a very serious stakeholder. Yeah.
I guess as we close, I'm curious what being disabled and proud means to you.
I think the way uh, the way I operate. it's it's the how way I manage my daily life, the way I take care of myself, the way I try to take time for my own self-care. I think I'm very disabled and proud.
I love that. And are there any projects that you're working on right now that you could use some support on?
I think for green disability, I will need a lot of support from the community, and how we can create that conversation, that serious conversations, where we are coming with a lot of takeaways, where we are coming with a lot of recommendations for the policymakers, for the disability organizations, and somehow very concrete inputs as well. Yeah.
And if people want to follow up with you and follow you or follow your work, where is the best place to do that?
Yeah, Tiffany, as you know, I'm super active on LinkedIn. It's the best place to find me. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say even for our listeners, I have been thinking back about on my own career journey, and almost every single opportunity, professional opportunity that I've had has been through someone in my network, other than the initial internship that I applied for in university. And so, we talk a lot about the power of community on this podcast. And in addition to that, part of that is staying connected with people and the ways that disabled people are chronically online and connecting and building community that way, even and meeting each other in person online, even if we haven't yet met in person.
Yeah.
And online is just as valid as in person. So continue to build that community. Check out Puneet on LinkedIn. And with that, I guess I'll check. Is there anything that I didn't ask of you that you wish I would have asked? I
No, no,
have
Tiffany, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I actually forget to tell you that you are looking beautiful in this floral dress, and especially with the book in the background, it's all looking so good. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Tiffany.
Of course, this is always a fun time to record these podcasts because you get to watch the sun setting. And I'm a big fan of natural light and really appreciate Puneet being flexible with the time to do this in the middle of the night. And so with that, this is this episode of Diversability Amplified. This will likely be coming out soon. And so check it out. It may come out even before the book launches as well, if I can get my act together. But we have some other exciting guests coming up too. So subscribe if you haven't yet and check out some of our archives of past episodes with different community members. Thanks so much, everybody.